at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. He talks about the role of the chamber in politics.
A big part of our job here at the U.S. Chamber, we're a federation, so we have 3,000 chambers of commerce in this country. Downstream from us, we have 900 trade and professional associations as members, as well as hundreds of thousands of businesses, so we end up representing about 3 million different elements of the business community. The key for us is to gain multipliers from that federation, from those chambers of commerce, from those trade associations, and try and target the communications so that if the member of Congress is receiving communications from in-state, in their district, people that they know, people, in fact, that they ultimately depend on every election cycle to get elected, they will always pay more attention to constituents. I think members of both parties want the involvement of this institution because we are the largest business federation in the United States. They obviously would hope that we would find a way to support their agenda, endorse their legislation, encourage our members to communicate to the members of Congress to vote for that legislation. And obviously there are times when we can and will do that when we agree, and there are times when we can't and won't do that when we disagree.
John Boniface, your response to the Chamber's analysis of its role.
Well, I think that the comment there is very clear and direct as to what they're about. They're about influencing our politics and our policy, but the problem is that when we have corporations that are artificial entities that we're supposed to rule over as we the people, coming in and using their general treasury funds to do so, we see a subversion of our democracy and self-government of, for, and by the people. Corporations do not think. They do not breathe. They do not have a conscience. In fact, they have state-based advantages that you and I as people do not have. Limited liability, perpetual life, the ability to aggregate wealth and distribute wealth. And when they funnel this kind of money, general treasury funds of corporations, through organizations like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, they undermine fundamental self-government principles. And that's what's so dangerous, not just about the Citizens United ruling, but this entire corporate rights doctrine. We the people must rule, not we the corporations. And that's why a critical movement must be moving forward in terms of a 28th Amendment to the Constitution, and freespeechforpeople.org is working with others to do that. We must see that we the people govern in America, not we the corporations.
You know, it's interesting, John, as you sit in a commercial TV studio in Chicopee, who's benefiting here? I mean, who's benefiting to an unprecedented degree are the local TV stations and networks all over this country. I mean, the amount of money they are getting, it used to be, you know, Iowa depended on this every 4 years, right? The campaign ads in Iowa for president, they are TV stations. Now we're talking about this all over the country, so it's unlikely you're going to have a really extensive discussion about this in these TV stations all over the country. What about that? What TV networks should be doing right now? The whole issue of free ads.
I couldn't agree more, Amy, and I mean that's clearly why we need independent media, because the fact is there is this windfall going to commercial media with these ads, and they benefit, no question about it. We need hard-hitting journalism that exposes where this money's coming from, the secrets that are occurring as a result of this spending. E.J. Jonah of the Washington Post recently talked about this as being as akin to Watergate times with respect to the amount of secret money coming into our process, and it's a danger to our democracy. But just as much of a danger, to be clear, is the fact that this money is coming from the corporate source, which is not regulated and, in fact, is undermining our self-government. When corporations go into court and argue that they have free speech rights to strike down environmental laws, health care laws, consumer rights laws, that's just as much of a threat as when they spend the corporate general treasury funds in our elections. And that's why we've got to reclaim our Constitution and democracy for the people.
I'd like to ask Jeff, in terms of the practicalities of being able to get an amendment like this passed, what would have to be done at the state levels? How many states could it be done by referendum? How many would it require an act of the legislature? And what is the vehicle or mechanism that you're putting into place to be able to affect your goal?
We're using the same mechanism, Juan, that Americans have used for 2 centuries to amend the Constitution to make democracy work. And that's Article 5 of the Constitution. And what that requires is certainly a consensus that it needs to be done. And that is reflected in its requirement of 2/3 of Congress needs to pass the amendment. And then it goes to the states for ratification. And 3/4 of the states then need to ratify that amendment. So we expect, frankly, to be everywhere. We're going to be in Washington. We're going to be in every state in the Union. This is an issue that is the American people care deeply about in every part of the country. Whether we disagree about many things. We don't, by and large, we don't disagree that government, elections, the courts are for we the people, not for corporations.
But
so,
just to be clear, Congress would have to act first before the states could consider it, or could the states begin their own movement?
The states can absolutely begin their own movement, and we must begin that movement in the states. I think we know Congress will follow the people, and in the end, Congress will need to pass a bill by 2/3 majority, but the way we're going to get that done is by people in the states passing state resolutions, people in their communities passing resolutions, people in towns and cities and states across the country passing resolutions demanding that Congress send to the states for ratification the Free Speech for People Amendment, which will overturn Citizens United. And then we'll get that vote in Congress. And every one of these amendments, and believe it or not, even basic propositions like women should have the same right to vote as men, that took 30 years to get that done, and countless resolutions in states, countless bills in Congress, and that's what we need to do now. Other amendments happen quicker, and we think this one will happen quicker.
You know, it's getting extreme, very extreme. So you're seeing a lot of revolts happening. I'm looking at a piece on Alternet. Local chapters revolt as U.S. Chamber of Commerce tries to buy the election for Republicans. They're quoting the head of the Philadelphia chapter of the Chamber of Commerce, Christopher Pinto, the communications vice president, who says the Philadelphia chapter joined the U.S. Chamber of Commerce to get free access to a piece of expensive software and doesn't plan to renew next year. These local groups are getting furious that the chamber is playing this role. And then you also have the ACLU. And I've seen when ACLU grassroots membership get furious at the leadership saying, why are you supporting corporations having this voice and being able to spend unlimited amounts of money in these elections? What do you make of the ACLU?
Well, let me first say about the chamber, I think that is exactly right, and that belies the statement of the chamber representative that you showed a few minutes ago, Amy, where they would like to present this image that the chamber is just a representative of businesses and small chambers across the country. It just isn't so. It's a vehicle for the very largest corporations, the global transnational corporations,
Chevron,
to funnel money.
Goldman Sachs.
Exactly. Chevron, Goldman Sachs, AIG, others, Dow Chemical, to funnel money through, to hide their tracks and let the chamber do the dirty work to dominate our democracy. On the ACLU, it's a very interesting issue. I've been an ACLU member for most of my life, back to high school. I think it's a very important that card-carrying member of the ACLU. And believe me, I don't agree with the ACLU National Board's decision not to support an amendment, not to work to overturn Citizens United. But we've got to remember that vote of the ACLU board, that itself was divided, and I think the vote was 36-30. So the ACLU is having a conversation, and I'm confident that Americans, including the ACLU and elsewhere, are going to come around to work with us to bring democracy back to the people. And I think that will happen in chapters of the ACLU and states across the country, too. It's a tough issue, but we're going to work through this in the ACLU, and we as Americans are going to get this amendment done.
And quickly, is there any state in particular now that you see as the leading edge of this fight?
Well, there are many states, actually, that have gotten off the mark fast to do this. There's a movement in Maine called the Maine Campaign to Reclaim Democracy. There's a lot of activity in Colorado, California, Massachusetts, of course, where John and I are from. Down in Kentucky, we've got a lot of interest, just in almost every state. And the question is, where are we organizing? And that's very important. I think people should start organizing now, because the sooner we get organized in every state, the sooner we'll get this done. done, but there's clearly interest in states that otherwise are very different on this issue. They're working on this.
Well, we want to thank you both for being with us, Jeff Clements and John Boniface of Free Speech for People. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. When we come back, we're going to look at hunger around the world and how countries and corporations are buying up land in large swaths of land in other countries. This is Democracy Now!